January 1st, 2019, one of the most important days in professional wrestling history. Unveiled on the first Being the Elite of the year, All Elite Wrestling was born as Cody, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega and Adam Page joined forces with Tony Khan to enter the business side of wrestling with some proper competition to WWE for the first time since the days of World Championship Wrestling. With their first show being on May 25th that year, that being the first Double or Nothing that saw the first post-WWE appearance of Jon Moxley, a fire was lit as the wrestling world was buzzing with this vastly different wrestling promotion compared to the big leagues of sports entertainment. It's time to open our books and put pen to paper, or in this case, fingers to keyboard, and plan out what would happen if Scottish wrestling invaded All Elite Wrestling. Some important admin to note before we get into it, because that's always exciting. No signed Scottish talent will be on this list. So no Gallus, Kaylee Ray, Kenny Williams, Joe Hendry, etc. Rosie Knight, Emily Hayden and Ashley Vega versus Big Swole, Penelope Ford and Chris Statlander. Kicking things off is of course The Buy-In, AEW's pre-show that usually features one or two additional matches. First off, some 6-woman tag team action, pitting Rosie Knight, Emily Hayden and Ashley Vega against Big Swole, Penelope Ford and Chris Statlander. Rosie, Emily and Ashley are a trio of next big stars for Scottish wrestling, with Emily already climbing that ladder one rung at a time with Toasty by her side. Over the past year, AEW have received some harsh comments regarding their treatment of the women's division, which is fair. Combining the hilarious antics of Emily and Chris, the hard-hitting underdog personas of Rosie and Swole, the diva attitude of Tori Wilson's biggest fan Ashley Vega, and the no-nonsense nature of Penelope Ford allows for one hell of a match to take place. The Casino Battle Royale. When it came to the Casino Battle Royale, critics were straight to their keyboards, but at least it got some people on the card that perhaps wouldn't have gotten a spot otherwise. Both of the 2019 winners would go on to reach massive heights, with Adam Page being one half of the reigning World Tag Team Champions alongside Kenny Omega, while Nyla Rose would become the second Women's World Champion in history by defeating Riho. So here we go, a 21-man field, 10 from Scotland, 10 from AEW, and 1 wildcard entry. For the Scottish entrants we'll go with Andy Wilde, Jason Reed, Omar Mohammed, Jack Morris, Caleb Valhalla, Ian Skinner, Kieran Kelly, Alexander Dorber McAllen, Dean Ford and Alex Webb. From the AEW side of rings, Luchasaurus, Marco Stunt, Jungle Boy, Kip Sabian, Joey Janela, Orange Cassidy, Lance Archer, Jimmy Havoc, Adam Page and Brandon Cutler. The wildcard entry? JT Dunn. He is more than deserving of a spot in the AEW roster. There's a fine mix of talent in here, people being flung across the ring by Wilde and Archer, the mean goodness of Skinner, Webb and Sabian, athletic displays from Morris and Jungle Boy, hard-hitting strikes from Ford, Dunn and Luchasaurus, plus, all the drinking shenanigans from Adam Page. Wrestling! Grant McIver versus MJF accompanied by Wardlow. So basically, I wanted to give MJF a singles match on this little super show. He's a bit too far up his own ass if we're being honest, regardless of how good a wrestler he may be. Dubbing himself the salt of the earth and coming out dressed in sharp suits with the all-important Dynamite Dozen ring, Maxwell Jacob Friedman is the biggest twat to ever twat. Who better to face him from Scotland than Source Wrestling standout Grant McIver? The current Source champion has been underlooked for far too long now, but he'll never let anyone forget that he's still doing the wrestling. The promos alone would make this one worth it in every way possible. The in-ring action would only come as an added bonus. The Foundation of the Future versus the Death Triangle. I very nearly put the Foundation of the Future in here against SCU because Christopher Daniels is very good. Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky are also nice. But then, the memory returned to my head of Zack Dynamite vs Pac, so alas, we now have the Death Triangle instead of the California natives. The match between Zack and Pac at Aberdeen Anarchy 2019 was exceptional, but one thing that levered the match in Zack's favour was the added bonus of Bradley Evans and Ryan Riley in his corner. Sadly, Pentagon Jr. and Ray Phoenix were unable to make it to Aberdeen that evening after getting on the wrong plane and heading to Daniel Bryan's house. We haven't seen too much of the Death Triangle because, some issues you may have heard of. However, it can't be that bad, right? Crusher Crave accompanied by Connor Ingalls versus Mr. Brody Lee accompanied by the Dark Order. Brody Lee is wonderful. The Dark Order might not be the best ring of all time, sorry Evil Uno, but the Exalted One has made for one of AEW's greatest roster additions since their founding. As I tried to decide on the Lee's opponent, I recalled back to a tweet Billy made pitting the former Luke Harper against Crusher Crave. When you have a match like that, you just can't top it. One half of the current WrestleZone Tag Team Champions, Crusher would be the perfect fit to face Big Brody, both men packing quite a big boot. Behave. Add Connor Ingalls at ringside to combat the Dark Order, or he might get abducted and turned into number 11. Poor lad. The Fight Network versus Private Party. If there's one major gripe I have with AEW's booking thus far, it's definitely been the lack of Private Party. When the company first kicked off, Mark Quinn and Isaiah Cassidy seemed destined for greatness, but now here we are with very few Dynamite appearances under their belt. When you watch them in the ring, you're often left mesmerised. The gin and juice, the silly string, the shooting star press, it's all great. I had to put them in here against Liu King, Sharp and Krieger, a team that is constantly proving their doubters wrong. Granted, I could have put the Kings of Catch in here against Quinn and Cassidy, a match that could have went down with the ill-fated OWE Tag Tournament, but sometimes the obvious choice isn't always the best one. Sharp and Krieger against the Vodka fans would offer a vastly different match from Aspen and Lewis. Maybe make it a street fight too, seeing as Liu King Sharp has been a tad good in that sort of environment. Leighton Buzzard vs Sammy Guevara. Leighton Buzzard and Sammy Guevara is a match that could have numerous subheadings. The Battle of the 450 Splashes, the Clash of Wrestling's Best Hair, the Twink Tussle. They're two of the finest cruiserweight wrestlers in wrestling today, both being cocky little dicks that are lucky they can back it up in the ring, or else they'd be getting decimated week in and week out for their general cockiness. Granted, the Spanish God was literally run down by Matt Hardy and Kenny Omega, but he's a lovely little wrestler with a nice go-to-sleep variation. Same goes for the Captain. He's a lovely little Captain boy with a nice hairline. Look, I just really want to see them both in the ring at the same time, leave me alone. The Kingdom of Catch versus the Elite. It's no surprise that we at SWN Towers are big Kingdom of Catch fans, so let's put them against the Elite because it would be the best wrestling match to ever take place, sorry Edge and Randy. Aside from Sami Zayn, these five are actually no stranger to one another, with Lewis facing Kenny and the Young Bucks at a Discovery Wrestling show while teaming with Joe Coffey and BT Gunn. Lewis and Aspen, who was at ringside, both found themselves being spiked with a double Meltzer driver, and since then, the feud between the Kings and the Bucks hasn't died down. We're still waiting for the straight up 2-on-2 tag match to happen, which could have been put in here, but why have 2-on-2 when you can add two more great wrestlers for what could be the greatest 6-person tag team match in the history of wrestling? Daz Black vs Darby Allin. In Scottish wrestling, it's no secret that Daz Black is the guy to watch. Every match he has is amazing, no matter if it's in front of a family crowd against Danny Edwards or in front of a more hardcore audience against Craig Anthony. The Orbit Breaker always puts in more effort than required. That's just one of the reasons he's going to be a big name in Scottish wrestling for years to come. As for Darby Allin, he too is a sensational performer, as his AEW matches have proven time and time again. The painted Allin will do literally anything to put his name on the map, even if that means fighting with his arms tied behind his back or bringing his back on the ring apron. The coffin drop is a nasty move considering Darby doesn't look where he's going. Aside from Leighton vs Sammy, this will be your cruiserweight portion of the evening that will leave you on your feet clapping for both men, and not just because their dives to ringside will make you jump out your seats. Jackson vs Chris Jericho. Jackson, or Jackie Pole, whatever you want to call him, is one of Scotland's greatest to ever lace a pair of boots. Meanwhile, Chris Jericho is one of the greatest full stop to ever lace a pair of boots. put them in opposing corners and wait for magic to be created. Not only are both men amazing wrestlers, but they're both great at creating characters and running with them. Just Justice was a major highlight for ICW in 2018, whereas Jericho has had too many different character changes to even remember them all. Le Champion is a personal favourite. It's a crime that Jericho gets younger as he ages. It's just impossible for him to have a bad performance. No doubt, this would be your wrestling portion of the evening, even if it does get out of hand from time to time. Angel Hayes vs Nyla Rose for the AEW Women's World Championship. The first of two championship matches now, this one being for the AEW Women's World Championship. Nyla Rose has proven herself to be quite the intimidating force in AEW, especially when she's against much smaller opponents such as former champion Riho. That's why we've got the native beast against Angel Hayes. Angel might be smaller when compared to someone like Nyla Rose, but don't let that fool you, as the young lioness packs more than just a punch. You don't make history just by showing up, you have to put in the graft. Angel, of course, does just that, which is why she's classed as one of the fastest rising stars in Scottish wrestling today. First female to hold the Shield Pro Wrestling Almost Pro Championship. First female to enter the PBW King of Cruisers match. First Scottish performer to be an AEW champion. If only. Stevie Boy vs Jon Moxley in a death match for the AEW World Championship. Last but by no means least, the AEW World Championship match. Champion Jon Moxley versus challenger Stevie Boy in a death match because it would be a treat to the eyes. Obviously, it wouldn't be a treat to those involved, but if Moxley proved down his reign in CCW, it's like he'll do literally anything to ensure a victory. While he hasn't had quite the same sort of experience in these types of matches, Stevie Boy does know a thing or two about taking it to the extreme from time to time. Plus, him versus Jon Moxley would be really good, regardless of it being a death match or just a standard wrestling match. I'm only really adding the weapons because I'm a psycho who enjoys seeing people suffer.